My name is Daniel Cole. I'm 62 years old, and after spending nearly 4 decades building a stable life, a peaceful home, and a future for my children, I never imagined that one day I would walk into my own house, my sanctuary only to find a group of complete strangers dragging their suitcases across my living room floor while my son acted like he was running a motel. But what unfolded that afternoon didn't just shock me, it changed the entire direction of my family forever. It all started when I returned from a 4-day business trip in Seattle, exhausted, jet-lagged, and desperate for nothing more than a hot shower, a cup of strong coffee, and the comfort of my favorite recliner, the one that has molded itself to the shape of my back after years of late-night reading. But the moment I pulled into the driveway earlier than scheduled around 10 a.m., far earlier than the evening return time my son expected, I noticed something odd. 3 unfamiliar cars parked across the lawn. Tires sinking into the grass I spend hours mowing every weekend, and my stomach tightened as I grabbed my suitcase, walked toward the front door, and heard voices laughing inside, voices that didn't belong to anyone in my family. With a sinking feeling, I opened the door and froze. 2 strangers, a couple in their 30s, stood right there in my hallway holding moving boxes, looking at me with confusion. And behind them, my son, Eric, 27 years old, with a guilty expression on his face that told me instantly this wasn't some misunderstanding. I raised my eyebrows and said, "Eric, what is happening in my house?" But before my son could stutter a single excuse, the woman stepped forward and said, "You must be the landlord. Eric told us you wouldn't be home until tonight." And my heart nearly stopped. Because landlord? Landlord? I wasn't renting anything to anyone. The house I bought 27 years ago with the first real paycheck I ever earned. The home where Eric grew up, the home where we had Christmas mornings, birthday parties, the same home my wife and I renovated room by room until the entire place felt like an extension of our family, but now strangers were being let inside without my knowledge. Eric froze like a child caught stealing cookies, clutching his phone, and said, "Dad, I can explain. But there is no explanation on earth for strangers moving into your house while you're away." So I stepped inside slowly, scanning the scene like I was walking into a crime. There were boxes stacked near the dining table, suitcases near the sofa, a backpack on the floor, and my favorite recliner moved to the corner like some useless decoration. I clenched my jaw and demanded, "Explain now." And Eric started rambling, telling me nonsense about how he needed extra cash, how he found a great deal, and how he thought it would be temporary, all while avoiding eye contact. And finally the truth spilled out. He had listed my house on a short-term rental app, not a room, not the basement, the entire property for a whole month while I was gone, claiming I would never know, because apparently in his mind, I was some helpless old man who wouldn't return early or check anything. The couple behind him looked mortified, the woman whispering to her partner, "He said he owned the place." And I felt something inside me break, not just anger, but disappointment so deep it felt like a knife between my ribs. This wasn't the behavior of a struggling kid trying to survive. Eric had a job, a stable one I helped him get, and this wasn't about need. This was about entitlement, shortcuts, and complete disrespect. I turned to the couple who were clearly innocent in this mess and said, "I'm sorry for the situation you were dragged into, but no one has permission to stay here," and they nodded apologetically, quickly gathering their things and rushing out to their cars. But as soon as they left, the storm inside my chest erupted. I closed the door, turned to Eric, and said in the calmest voice I could manage, "You rented out my house while I was alive, living in it and fully paying for every bill?" And Eric exploded defensively, accusing me of being too emotional, claiming plenty of people do this, and insisting I was overreacting, which only made everything worse. I walked into the living room, my living room, observing the mess he created, noticing items moved, drawers left open, and even my master bedroom door slightly ajar, meaning strangers had already toured through it, touched it, invaded it, and that was the moment the switch flipped inside me. I went straight to the home office, grabbed the folder where all the property documents were stored, placed them on the dining table, pointed to the bolded name on every page, mine, and said, This house belongs to me, not you, and you violated the law by renting out property. You don't own? Eric's face drained of color and he tried to argue, but there was nothing left for him to stand on, especially when I pulled out the printed rental listing he had created, complete with photos he took while I was away, photos of my bedroom, my closet, my bathroom, even the safe hidden behind. The dresser he apparently didn't know I used daily. I looked him in the eye and said, "Pack your things," and he froze, whispering, "Dad." "No, please," but the line had been crossed too many times. He had borrowed money without returning it, blamed me for his problems, treated the house like it was his right instead of my gift, and now he had given strangers full access to my home, my privacy, my life. He begged, promised, swore it would never happen again, but promises mean nothing when trust is already burned to ash. I stepped aside and repeated, "Pack your things." And after a long moment, he finally realized I wasn't negotiating. He went upstairs, slowly, defeated, and for the first time I saw him not as my son, but as a man who needed to face consequences for the first time in his life. While he packed, I walked through the house, checking for damage, and the more I looked, the more painful details I found: a spilled drink stain near the coffee table, someone's cheap perfume lingering in the hallway, foreign fingerprints on the fridge door, a blanket from my bedroom folded differently. Proof strangers had already made themselves comfortable while thinking the real owner was miles away. Eric eventually came downstairs with 2 duffel bags, tears in his eyes, asking, "Where am I supposed to go?" Then I told him calmly, "To a place you pay for yourself," because he had lived rent-free in my home for 2 years while never showing appreciation, never helping with bills, and constantly blaming the world for his problems. As he stepped out the door, he said, "You're choosing a house over your own son," and I replied, "No, I'm choosing respect. Something you stopped giving," and I watched him walk away, shoulders slumped, finally understanding that actions have consequences. Over the next week, my phone blew up with calls from relatives, all of whom Eric had apparently manipulated with half-truths. But when I showed them the evidence, screenshots, contracts, the rental listing, they went silent, some even apologizing for judging me. And for the first time in years, my home felt peaceful again, quiet, safe, and entirely mine. I changed the locks, installed new security cameras, canceled Eric's digital access, and met with my lawyer to ensure my property was legally protected from any future stunts. As painful as it was to enforce tough love, it was necessary, because sometimes protecting your home means protecting your dignity, and sometimes protecting your dignity means letting your own child face the life he created. Months passed, and Eric eventually found a small apartment, started paying his own bills, and for the first time, he began understanding responsibility, slowly, but genuinely. Our relationship didn't heal overnight, but when he came by on Thanksgiving, he hugged me longer than he ever had, whispering, "Dad, I'm sorry," and that was the first apology that felt real. But I'll never forget the moment I walked into my house that day, exhausted and unprepared, only to find strangers unpacking boxes in the home I built with my bare hands. And I'll never forget the lesson that came from it. Entitlement grows in silence, but respect grows when boundaries are finally drawn.